Alex, lovely to see you. We're here to talk about Sea Shepherd. And some of you may know what Sea Shepherd is, some might not. But for those who don't know anything, why don't you just give a bit of an introduction? What is Sea Shepherd?
Sure. So Sea Shepherd is a marine conservation group. We go around the world protecting marine ecosystems from the tiniest creatures to the large whales. And we've been doing that for quite a while.
We talked a lot 2 years ago about whales and some of the anti-whaling campaigns that have historically been part of what we do. What's changed in the last 2 years? What are we doing these days?
Yeah, in the last 2 years, we've been focusing on, well, of course, the campaigns we've been doing, like IUU fishing, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. We continue doing that. But in the last 2 years, we've really focused on two specific campaigns. The Krill campaign, anti-krill fishing campaign in Antarctica, and the octopus campaign in the Mediterranean Sea. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about that.
What is the krill campaign in Antarctica?
So there is a legal fishery in Antarctica, and they fish for krill. And it's, the target of the krill fishery is about what they get. Their quota is about 620,000 tons of krill. Now, they say it's only 1% of the total global biomass of krill. But the problem is they're fishing in one specific area. And that happens to be the same area where the whales are feeding for krill. So basically you're seeing an industry that's competing with the whales for their very food source.
What was that weight of krill that you said?
620,000 tons of krill.
And I'm just thinking the weight of a krill is so small that is a huge number.
Yeah, it's like a small shrimp-like creature. So we got footage of the offloading from the krill fishing vessels onto the cargo ship. And it's like those big blue or white building bag completely filled with krill, row after row after row. It's a ridiculous amount. And the way they're fishing it, there's a couple of ways to fish it, but the more modern method is they put a net in the water, they keep it in the water, and they drag it through the water, and then there's a vacuum pump goes into the net, and they suck the krill up. The problem is, a lot of animals end up in those nets as well. So, for instance, penguins swim towards the krill fishing vessels, and they end up in the nets, so they get killed. Whales follow, and we've seen that, whales follow the krill fishing vessels, they end up in the net. So every year there's a couple of whales that die as bycatch in the krill fishing fleet. But the bigger problem is, of course, the food source that's been taken away from the whales. And for instance, the humpback whale pregnancy in the Southern Ocean has dropped from 82 to 29% in 4 years' time. That's simply because there's not enough food anymore. And because you're saying, well, there's only 1% of the biomass that they're fishing, but if they're fishing it in one specific area where the whales are also feeding, it's a big problem. And also that 1% is based on old scientific data. And of course, you've seen that because of melting sea ice and global warming, there's less icebergs in Antarctica. That means there's less phytoplankton, which means there's less krill. And therefore, there's less for the whales to feed. So that 1% of an amount that was established is already far more than 1% because the actual biomass of krill is already much, much lower. So what we're trying to accomplish is that we're getting a marine protected area created in one specific area where we know that the whales are feeding.
How does that work? Because I guess the waters of Antarctica are not owned by any one country. So
Correct.
When we have marine protected areas related to a country, it's kind of you speak to that country.
Yeah, but we're also talking about protecting marine protected areas in international waters. Around Antarctica, there's only about 5% that's protected. And if we want to get to 30 by 30, well, we're in 2026 here. So we've got 4 years to go, and we only have 5% protected. What we want is to have one specific area, that's Coronation Island. The southern part is already protected, but the northern part is where you find the whales. And that's also where you find the krill fishing vessels. And they're fishing exactly in that area. And that's all they're fishing. So instead of fishing all around the world, catching the krill, they're fishing in one specific area. I was on board the LNK, our ship, during our last anti-whaling campaign, anti-krill fishing campaign in 2025. And we were north of Coronation Island, and we saw one morning the biggest concentration of whales I've ever seen in my life. And I've been down to Antarctica. This was my 6th time during the anti-whaling campaigns, and this was the first time I did a krill campaign. I've never seen this many whales in one day. There were about 500 whales surrounding the ship. It was a sight I'll never forget. Humpbacks, fin whales, southern right whales, all around us. And in the middle of that were the krill fishing vessels, competing with these whales for their food. So what we want is that area to be closed off for the fishing.
It's interesting. I'm kind of thinking about krill as an organism not being necessarily the most sexy organism to think about conserving, but clearly there's a massive knock-on impact for animals that are much sort of greater in our mind's eye when we think about conservation, whales.
Yeah, I mean, the krill is the very basis of the food source down there. And it's not just the whales that depend on the krill, it's also the penguins and all the other seabirds, the sea lions, the seals that are actually dependent on the penguins. So if you take the very basis of the food system out, there's going to be a massive collapse.
What is krill used for?
It's actually three markets. I'll start with the most ridiculous one. The Chinese are developing a new line of pet food, krill-enhanced pet food, because it makes the fur of cats and dogs nice and shiny. So that's the most ridiculous one. The second one is they're using it as salmon feed for the salmon farms up in Norway. So Aker Marine is one of the biggest companies that are fishing for krill down there. They're catching about 55% of all that krill is being caught, is caught by the Norwegians, and they're using it primarily for salmon feed. And then the third one is...
And just to say that the salmon side of things is to make the salmon look pink and
to make the
brightly
salmon look
coloured
pink. Yeah, because the alternative is to actually put colorants in the food. And then, of course, you'll also get a nice pink color, because farmed salmon is not pink, it's grayish, and that doesn't really sell well. So that's why they're using methods to market it better. And then the third one is omega-3. So the omega-3 food supplements. Now, there's three ways to getting omega-3. There's the fish oil, the krill oil, and there's the algae oil, plant-based. Algae are actually the basis of the omega-3. So that's the source. But for some reason, the krill oil industry is making it so much more interesting for people to buy krill oil. They're saying it's better for you. But the source is always better. It's also cheaper. So plant-based, algae-based krill oil, omega-3 oil is actually cheaper and better for the environment. So we're really pushing for people to stop buying krill oil. And one of the ways we're doing that is by targeting the market. In December last year, we were able to get Holland & Barrett to stop selling krill oil in their shops. It's a great victory.
And sorry, that's Sea Shepherd that's what we've done.
Yeah, we've been in conversation with Holland & Barrett, and they agreed to phase it out. So by April, there won't be any more krill oil in their assortment, because obviously they have to get to the stock that they have. If you go into a Holland & Barrett right now, you probably won't find any krill oil supplements anymore. At the moment, we're targeting another big company, another big UK company, Boots, and we're hoping to get them on board. And we're having Holland & Barrett to work together with us to push others in the industry to stop selling krill oil. So they're the first mover, and through them and together with them, we're hoping that other companies will follow, and eventually that nobody will be selling krill oil anymore.
That's fantastic. So it's a kind of multi-pronged approach to the campaign. Media side on the one hand, documenting what's going on. I think you said to me earlier there were going to be some scientists who were going to be going down for this year's campaign in Antarctica as well to kind of further clarify the research side of things. Yeah,
we got cooperation from Stanford University. We got scientists going to be on board to actually document what the interaction between the krill fishing fleet and the whales is. So to actually see that where there are krill fishing vessels and you'll see a large concentration of whale, what are the effects on the whale population? So they're getting more and more scientific data that will help us to get the organization responsible for fishing there, the organization that can help us create these marine protected areas, to actually stop krill fishing in that area.
So you said that you've been on board in Antarctica 5-6 times now. What's that experience like?
Yeah, so last year I went for the first time in 13 years. I mean, I'm the CEO now, so they don't let me go on board anymore, unfortunately. I break things.
You started off as a chef, I remember.
Yeah, I did start. Well, I'm Dutch, so I'm not sure if anybody here knows about Dutch cuisine. Yeah, we're not very famous, so I was quickly promoted to the bridge.
When I was on board, the chef was from Singapore, so I had a really good time.
Yeah, I know her. She's very good. Yeah, I wasn't very good. I had mash most of the days, and yeah, I was not very famous for my food. So I got quickly promoted to the bridge, where I became a captain and did the campaigns. And Yeah, but this was the first time in 13 years I went down to Antarctica. And I was actually shocked by the amount of sea ice I saw, because in previous years we would not be able to be down there in February. This time we went in February. We came back in March, and there was hardly any sea ice. So you can really see the effects of global warming. There's actually, it's not freezing over anymore. And that means there's less phytoplankton. That means there's less krill.
That's really upsetting to hear, that you've 13 years later noticed such a big difference. I guess people going year on year might not notice such small changes every year.
Yeah, it's really visible. So that's why we have to stop this industry. But unfortunately, it's a legal industry, so we have to do it the legal way. And that's why we have this three-pronged approach. So by targeting the market, by getting scientific data to help create these marine protected areas, but also by getting media out there to show the world what's going on and to put more pressure on the organizations. Now, unfortunately, the organization that regulates fishing down there is the Commission for Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, CAMLAR. They have to have every decision made unanimously. And in the past years, there's been 2 countries that have been blocking any decision that would improve conservation.
Any guesses?
Any guesses? No, actually not US. No, it's China and Russia. And Russia doesn't even have a vessel down there. They're just against it because the West is in favor of it. So yeah, geopolitics are not helpful.
One thing that when I first heard about Sea Shepherd, I knew about the organisation as a direct action organisation, and we don't just work with the krill campaign down in the Antarctica, but there's several other campaigns that are going on around the world all year round. We want to talk a little bit about what happens in the Mediterranean today. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Well, Mediterranean, we've been doing a campaign, doing various campaigns in the Mediterranean. Sea Shepherd Italy has been doing about 8 campaigns now, various ways to protect marine wildlife. But personally, my favorite campaign, probably the most favorite campaign I've ever had in Sea Shepherd, is our octopus campaign. We started our octopus work, and if you've ever seen an octopus on the water, if you're a diver, people say seeing a shark is the best thing you can find. Seeing an octopus is even greater, because you'll never find one. They're always hidden. This campaign we started in the Tuscan Reserve in Italy about 3.5 years ago. And you have to realize that octopus fishery is actually not allowed in a certain time of the year when it's the reproductive season. Because then the octopus lay their eggs, and of course you don't want to catch them when they lay the eggs, because then not only are you killing the octopus, you're killing the offspring as well. So it's really important that we stop the illegal fishing of octopus in that period. When we did, and it's only 1 month in Italy, it's only from July 15 to August 15 that people are not allowed to fish for octopus. But they do it anyway. So when we started this campaign, we pulled in 1 month, we took out 7,600 traps, illegal traps, and freed thousands of octopus in the process.
And what is a trap? A trap can hold, what, 1 octopus, more than that? Or?
It's like almost like a jar, maybe like a 2-gallon jar, that they put with a lead weight in the bottom. It's sunk to the bottom, and then the octopus goes in and makes a hiding place, or in some cases they put the eggs inside. So when they yank it out of the water, the octopus gets taken out and the eggs are destroyed, not only killing the octopus, but also killing their offspring. Now, when we started the campaign in the Tuscan Reserve, the second year we were only able to pull out about 5,000 because the fishermen had stopped putting the traps out during the reproductive season. And now, after 3.5 years, their illegal fishing has been reduced by 90%. So there's a real impact of just those 3 campaigns. A year and a half ago, we started in Greece, where we heard there's more traps, and we've heard that in the area from northern Greece, the area from Thessaloniki to Alexandroupolis, the Turkish border, we heard estimates of about 500,000 illegal octopus traps. There, the closure is actually 3 months. So it's July, August, September that nobody's allowed to fish for octopus. But same as Italy, they do it anyway. So in Greece, we started in 2024. We pulled about 6,500 traps in about 17 days, 17 days. And then last year, we actually spent 2.5 months pulling traps, and we shattered the Italian record. We pulled out 35,000 illegal traps. So picture that. That's enough to fill this space completely up to the ceiling with illegal traps.
And you told me quite a staggering number earlier about the estimated number of traps that are actually in the waters there.
Yeah, they said, so the local fishermen who came to us, the legal fishermen, they said, you have to help us. The government is not helping us. And actually, Sea Shepherd is our last hope to preserve the octopus in Greek waters. And they said the estimates were about 500,000. But what we've seen in those 2.5 months is actually probably going to be higher than that, probably closer to 750,000. That is, octopus has no chance to survive with that number of traps.
It's absolutely staggering, isn't it? The numbers game when we talk about illegal fishing or fishing generally, commercial fishing, is absolutely staggering. It blows my mind every time. And certainly when I was on board, just visually seeing the size of the nets that we use to drag in tuna fish in West Africa, it blew my mind and was a real turning point in my practices when I came back home.
And in those nets, you could actually sometimes see a whale being entangled in the tuna nets. You've seen that?
Yeah. With the krill side of things, I know we were talking about whales being a real knock-on organism for the krill fishing campaign. With the Mediterranean, are there any particular species that we look at which are affected by octopus farming and octopus fishing?
Yeah, so the octopus, of course, it's a fantastic animal, and we all love the octopus. But the octopus is also the primary food source of the Mediterranean monk seal. It's one of the most endangered seals in the world, and they used to be critically endangered. And over the last few years, their numbers have actually gone up until they were endangered and now even vulnerable. So their numbers have steadily gone up. But because of the octopus fishery, we are afraid that the numbers are going to plummet again. So it's really important that we do something about the illegal octopus fishing, because that will have a ripple effect throughout the entire ecosystem, ending in that most iconic species, the biggest predator in the Mediterranean, the monk seal.
It really just goes to show that any one animal is part of a massive network of an ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of legal versus illegal when we talk about, say, we're talking about octopus fishing? How does someone sitting in a restaurant in the UK know where their octopus that they've ordered has come from? Is there a way of knowing? How do we get around these kind of questions and nuances?
I mean, I can't say for each and every restaurant, but I know, for instance, in Italy, that it's very difficult to say where the octopus is coming from. So probably also here, the octopus that's being caught could be Atlantic, could also be Mediterranean. I have no idea. I have to do a study of all the shops here in the UK. I would imagine that most of the octopus that are being caught in the Mediterranean end up on the food plate of Mediterranean restaurants, because there's a large demand for octopus, unfortunately. But as in every fishery, there's going to be illegal fishery and legal fishery. So I'm assuming the same applies here.
And it makes me think, and it's not a leading question, but the idea of going to the supermarket and choosing something that's been branded sustainable or dolphin-friendly, how do we get around that?
I mean, sustainable, just to give you an idea, krill fishery is sustainably certified.
Right.
How can that be sustainable? And so there's many fisheries that are actually labeled as sustainable that are not actually sustainable. We caught a fishing vessel in the Gambia about 1.5 years ago, an Italian-owned fishing vessel. They had boxes on board labeled sustainably caught, Friends of the Sea, and inside were shrimp. And it turned out that vessel actually didn't have the authorization to use that label. They lost it several years ago, but they just kept using the stamp. So if that ends up on the market in Italy, people see the stamp Friends of the Sea and they think, okay, it's all sustainably caught. But it's not. So unfortunately, there's a lot of misuse of labels in the industry. So it's very difficult to find out if something that you're eating is actually caught in a sustainable way. Of course, you can investigate, you can find out more than what the industry tells you, and you'll find that a lot of the species that you find in the fish shop are actually not sustainably caught.
I suppose the only thing we can really do is not to choose it at all. And that would be that's the only way you can truly know that you're not eating something that is or isn't sustainable, by not choosing it at all.
Unfortunately, in this world, the only way that you know that something is caught sustainably is that you caught it yourself, or if you know the person personally that caught it. Otherwise, it's always possible that it's not being caught in a way that didn't harm the environment. That's unfortunately the situation that we're in.
We're going to move on a little bit to maybe some of your highlights of your time as a Sea Shepherd veteran. You've spent months and months at sea over the last sort of 2 decades, would you say? Longer? Less?
Yeah, I've been now, this is my 24th year with Sea
24
Shepherd.
years.
Yeah.
What
I'm
have been
about
some
to
of
get
the,
my gold watch after 25 years.
What have been some of the absolute memorable highlights for you? Things that you'll tell your grandkids?
There's so many. I mean, actually, my second year with Sea Shepherd, I went to Japan, Taiji, Japan, where there's the annual dolphin drives. And together with another activist, we went into the waters and we cut the nets of the fishermen, and 15 dolphins escaped. Subsequently, of course, we were arrested for interfering with commerce, and we spent 23 days in a Japanese jail cell, which I don't recommend.
So you're saying a highlight was spending time in a Japanese jail cell?
Yeah, pretty much.
24 years.
Yeah, because you do it for a reason, and I think that's still one of my highlights. Absolutely. Because all dolphins are free now because of our action, and we got a lot of attention because of our action. And I remember when I came out of jail, the police gave me a letter from Pierce Brosnan, and he said, "You have a letter from James Bond."
Why was Pierce Brosnan sending you a letter?
He's been a supporter of Sea Shepherd for many years, so he sent a letter saying, we stand by your action. I think it's very brave what you did, and I want to salute you. So
that's fantastic. I was just thinking back to things that I remember. I did a campaign in West Africa 4 years ago, and when we were sat here last time, we talked a bit about bioluminescence and the phenomenon that you see at sea. And I have a vivid memory of sitting on a ship at 4 a.m. in the morning, just watching out bioluminescence surrounding the ship everywhere. And it was humpback whale season in that area, and then suddenly a humpback whale just shot out the water about 20 meters away. But it was bright green. It was like the Life of Pi scene that you might have seen in the film. It was unbelievable.
But without the tiger, of course.
Sorry?
Without the tiger.
Yeah, without the tiger. But yeah, there are some absolutely incredible memories that you make on board, and I think they stick with you for a long time.
Yeah, and also the food. I mean, since I'm no longer the chef, the food has drastically improved. We now have chefs from France and Italy, and we only serve plant-based on board. So, it's a complicated diet, of course. You have to have everything to be nutritious for people. But since I left, I've heard no more complaints about the food.
I mean, I think in some ways we can talk about these campaigns as kind of incredibly exciting campaigns where lots happens, and lots does happen. We have a great impact on what we're trying to achieve, but it's often a patience game. You can spend days doing not very much, and sometimes food is what you have to look forward to. And so actually having a beautifully cooked meal a couple of times a day is brilliant, and it keeps the morale of a crew that's very far away from home really high.
Yeah, people always think that the captain is the most important person on board. I can guarantee you it's not. It's the cook. If you have a good cook on board who keeps the crew happy, everybody's happy, and the captain can do a good job as well.
But you do get this kind of through the campaign, at the beginning of the campaign, all of your food is very rainbow coloured. There's loads of different vegetables involved. And then by the end, it's kind of rice and beans. It gets beigeur as the weeks go by.
Yeah, that's why we can't wait to go back to port. Actually, our ship, the Alan Kay, is currently on its way to Ushuaia for the new Krill campaign. Planned departure from Ushuaia in South America is going to be in a week. So the ship is just about to go through Drake's Passage, which is not a very pleasant crossing, I can tell you. And then we're going to start the Krill campaign again. So, yeah, what I've been hearing so far, they've been having fantastic views of icebergs all the way there, and some rough seas as well. So, but that'll happen soon enough when they get into Drake's Passage. It'll be a bit rougher.
Are there any exciting new ventures and directions for Sea Shepherd over the coming year and a half, 2 years?
A couple, actually. Yeah, a couple, actually. So we have the campaigns in Africa. We didn't talk about that too much yet. So we do the illegal fishing campaigns in 8 countries in Africa. And together with our government partners over the last 8 years, we were able to arrest 101 illegal fishing vessels, which is an enormous number. And based on the success of those campaigns, we've now ventured into the Pacific, and we're now working with 2 countries, Tuvalu and Bougainville. Now, Bougainville is part of Papua New Guinea, and they have applied to become independent from Papua New Guinea, and that's going to be planned for 2027. But one of the requirements for them to be independent is that they have to have a way to patrol their waters. That's where we come in. So together with the newly formed government of Bougainville, we've been doing a patrol, and we're going to be returning again in June this year to do a next patrol and stop illegal fishing in their waters. So replicating the success we've had in Africa, we're now going to be doing it in the Pacific.
So we've got a proven blueprint from West Africa that we're translating over somewhere else.
Yeah, so what we're doing, basically, we're offering our vessel, we're paying for all the cost, we're inviting the law enforcement of those countries on board, and they then patrol their waters looking for illegal fishermen. We are not the authorities, we can't do that, but together with the government partners, we make these successes.
What are some of the impacts that we've had with the IUU campaign? So we're talking about the illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing campaigns, the West Africa ones now, Papua New Guinea.
Well, besides the 101 arrests, which of course is great, we're seeing that local fishermen are actually telling us that the fish populations are returning and they're catching fish again. So these are artisanal fishermen. And like in a country like Liberia, that's been destroyed by civil war and Ebola pandemics, you can imagine that that's their only source of protein. So when illegal fishermen were coming in and fishing in their waters and basically destroying their livelihoods and destroying their future, they were very desperate. And when we came in and started helping them, we see now that the fish populations are returning and they're able to feed their families and village again.
And when we're talking about illegal fishing in this respect, what do we actually mean?
So it can be various ways of illegal fishing. So it could be somebody that doesn't have a license to fish in those waters, but it could also be somebody that has a license to fish for a certain species, but is actually catching a different species. Now, one example I want to give is a vessel called the Labico 2. This vessel was caught about 7 years ago in Liberian waters. They had a license to fish for tuna using long lines. So when we did a routine inspection, it turned out that they weren't fishing for tuna and they weren't using long lines. They're using deep-sea gill nets, and they were actually targeting sharks. And on board this vessel, we found a hidden shark liver oil factory. So they were making shark liver oil from the sharks they were catching in Liberian waters. And based on the amount of shark liver oil they would offload after each fishing expedition, we were able to calculate conservatively they were killing 500,000 sharks every single year.
And that's a conservative estimate.
That's a conservative estimate. So now it's been 7-8 years. So effectively, that one arrest saved the lives of 3.5 to 4 million sharks. One vessel. It's mind-blowing. That vessel had the capacity to wipe out deep-sea shark populations in Liberian waters. One vessel.
And it really highlights to me the multitude of ways in which a vessel can be fishing illegally. It's not just they don't have a license to do so and they are, but they're fishing for the wrong species.
And then, of course, there's bycatch.
They're not treating the bycatch in the right way. Just for the audience, what do we mean by bycatch?
Yeah, so bycatch is non-targeted species. You've probably seen some videos or read articles about fishermen catching, like you see in Ocean, the documentary with David Attenborough. You see that a lot of the catch from the trawlers is bycatch. It just gets discarded overboard. And to me, one of the most extreme examples of bycatch was a vessel that was caught in Gabon about 4 years ago. They had a license to fish for shrimp, but upon inspection, it turned out that 99.8% was not shrimp and was thrown back overboard.
That was my campaign, actually.
That was the one you were on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes you think what the amount of resource that's gone into one prawn cocktail is absurd.
Thousands of fish for one cocktail. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, 99.8%. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, really eye-opening numbers. Again and again, like every time we have a chat on stage, my mind is blown, unfortunately, in a bad way. There's some news, isn't there, about some of the local side of things this week. Sea Shepherd UK. What can you tell me about that?
So we actually didn't have a chapter in the UK, and so we applied. About 2.5 weeks ago, we applied, and we were told that it would take probably until May until we heard back from the Charity Commission. And to our surprise, we heard last week that we've been accepted as a charity, and we're now officially registered in the UK. So. And you're actually the first people I'm telling this, so we're breaking the news here today. There will be a website, seashepherd.uk, so keep following it. We're not prepared because we didn't expect this to happen this quickly. But there'll be social media coming out, and we'll be looking for volunteers, people to help us, and doing some events here in the future. But as I said, we were kind of expecting May, so yeah, we were kind of caught with our hands tied at the moment.
I was going to ask a question about what people can do from home, because obviously there will be people who have the time and the effort and the desire to come on board and work with us, which I fully recommend. It's an amazing experience, but not everyone can do that. And so Sea Shepherd UK and the fact that we're now going to be having a UK presence is going to be a brilliant way for people to get involved from this land side of things.
Absolutely, and we'll be doing events in the UK, and we'll be doing cleanups probably and other things that we get people to become involved with Sea Shepherd. I mean, obviously our main mission is the international campaigns. We're an organization that focuses on the work that the ships do. So of course the support that we get to make these ships able to continue doing the important work, that's the primary target. But through the community in the countries, we're obviously getting a big group of volunteers and people that help us in our missions. And so we're going to be developing campaigns in the UK as well. Yeah.
Do you have any, can you shed any light on those sort of campaigns, or?
Well, no, because we didn't expect this to be this quickly.
So I put you on the spot there.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But so did the Charity Commission. So,
To them.
yeah.